Hello everyone, welcome to MLOps Labs, and today we are going to talk about advanced deployment strategies that are available in Kubernetes cluster. And we're gonna look how we can achieve zero downtime and rolling back feature if we came across any certain bug into a particular version, and how can we immediately deploy a stable version to production. So in this video, we are going to talk about three strategies, which is rolling updates, blue-green deployment, and canary deployment. First, we are going to talk about rolling updates. So, rolling updates is a kind of a deployment method that updates software gradually instead of all at once. And in this strategy, new version of the application are gradually rolled out to replace the older version without taking the entire system down. And rolling updates are designed to ensure that the application remains available to the user during the update process, and this is crucial for the continuous uptime. So by gradually replacing the instance, the system can continue to operate as at least a part of the older version will always remain active while the new version is being rolled out. And this overlapping versioning helps in maintaining service continuity. So let's try rolling updates. So for example, currently on my cluster, I have deployed this fast API app, and currently the version 1 of the app is deployed. So if I want to check that, and if I can simply check that under my workloads and the application name and then the service endpoint. So if I hit this endpoint, you can see currently it's returning V1. And if I go back and do V2 and again apply this deployment, and come back here and just refresh this page, you'll see Kubernetes cluster had started terminating some of the instance and had started creating the new containers. So basically, it's creating the new containers for version 2 and terminating the older versions. So during this time, some of the pods might not be available to serve the traffic. But as you can see now, all the servers are running, and these servers are running on version 2 probably. So yeah, now our application update has been completed, and all the pods are live with the latest version, that is version 2, and version 1 is just terminated because the new version is for the application is available throughout the deployment. So this is the concept of rolling updates. And in rolling update, we have certain parameters like max search and max unavailable fields, which we can tweak according to our needs and which determines the maximum number of replica that can be created above the desired number of replica, and maximum unavailable key determines the maximum number of replicas that can be unavailable during the update. To monitor your rolling update, we can simply use kubectl rollout command. So the command is kubectl rollout status. Now we have to mention the name of the deployment that we want to check status of and the namespace. So once we hit enter, we can see the deployment is successfully rolled out and the newer version is available to serve the traffic. And if we want to check the age of the pods, we can also do that using kubectl get command, kubectl pods, fn, and the name of the namespace. So now you can see the four replicas are in running state, and they're just 2 minutes. They are started like just 2 minutes ago. So these are on latest version 2. So let's explore our next deployment strategy, which is blue-green deployment. So this deployment strategy is crucial for minimizing downtime and risk by having two identical production environments that alternate between active and inactive states. So the concept of blue-green deployment is that you have two identical environment. One is blue environment, which is current live version, and the other is the green environment, which is the staging area for the new version. And both environments are configured to have the identical identical configuration, expect the software version. So this setups allow the testing of the newer version in the production-like setting without affecting the live system. And we switch from blue to green, involving routing, basically routing all the traffic from blue to green once the new version is fully tested and into a stable condition. So if I want to explain, so basically this is our current live environment, which is marked as a blue deployment. And there is a gateway connected to this blue deployment, which will help us later in routing the traffic from one deployment to another. Now we have created another deployment, which is on version 2, a different version after some like adding new features and something. And now we route all the traffic from version 1, from the blue environment to the green environment. So all the new users are redirected to version 2 now. But so why we do this? We do this such so that in case version 2 have some error, we can immediately roll back to version 1 by simply changing the gateway service endpoint. Now, once if we realize like version 2 is stable and tested and have isn't like is running in stable condition, we simply delete the blue deployment. And this is the version 2 is now at the main production deployment. And later on, if we want to do another release of version 3, we can follow the same procedures. To implement that, uh, basically we have to create two deployments file and two service files. So I have two deployments created. One is blue deployment and one is named green deployment. And both of have like different version running. So this one has a version named blue running and this one has a version named green running. And the output is gonna be different when we hit their main endpoint. So let's start applying the both the deployments to our Kubernetes cluster. Wait, I missed something here. So our blue deployment is successful. Now I'll try to deploy green one. Now the green deployment is also successful. I also have like two service file. One is that is pointing to blue deployment and one is that is pointing to green deployment. So let's deploy the service file as well. So our service name blue has been created. Now I'll try to deploy the green one. Our green service is also deployed now. So if we go back to our Kubernetes cluster, open workloads, we can see we have two deployments running in with OK status. And if we go to our basically to our workload, we can see like our service endpoint is still provisioning and it's now provisioned. And if we try to hit this endpoint, it's pointing to the blue deployment because the output is blue here. And if we go back to the green deployment and hit this service endpoint, we can see it's pointing to green deployment, which is in our case is version 2. So to simply put that, now we just have to configure our DNS server or some gateway to point to the new IP address rather than pointing to the original one. So in the initial diagram, you can see like we have one gateway attached, which is actually interacting with the user. So our gateway is the main point which routes the traffic to different deployments. And we can simply mention our service endpoint into our gateway DNS servers to point to the different deployments accordingly. And some of the advantages of blue deployments are basically it helps in minimizing downtime during the deployment as we simply have to switch between one deployment to another deployment and just change in the version. And we can validate the new changes of version 2 of software on a live production like environment. And we have also have facility to immediately roll back to our standby environment in case we face some issues or errors. But some of the challenges that come with this kind of deployments are it almost requires to double the resources which is right now we are having. So for example, this blue deployment is similar to green deployment, just the change in version, and it will consume the same, both the resources will consume the same resources. So it is kind of a heavy on the resource side. Also, the managing and synchronizing the data between the two environments can be complex sometimes, and we might have to sync the databases and everything in this case. So yeah, blue deployment is one of the good technique to keep running different version of your application, and depending on your requirement, you can and the stability you can switch between those environments.